So I'm recording now. So it's really good to meet you. Good to see you there. My name is Richard Smith. I teach at Warwick University in the United Kingdom. And I'm going to go straight in because we haven't got very much time. Unfortunately, can't really interact with you, but I would love to get to know you a little bit better. Maybe we can at the end, I'm not sure. So I'm going to try to share my screen. And if you can, when you can see my screen, please you put up your hands so that I know that you can see it. So I hope you can see it now. Can you see? Can you put up your hands if you can see that? Okay, that's great. So this is my topic today, an introduction to exploratory action research. And by the way, if at some point you can't see or if you can't hear, just raise your hands and wave at me so that I can be sure of that. I'm going to talk about something called exploratory action research, which I've developed with teachers in a South American country, Chile. And as I said, I'm from the University of Warwick in the UK, where I teach teachers from all around the world. Well, I'm planning to talk to you for about 40 minutes, and then we have a break, and then we have part two. There's a lot of people have these sorts of images of research, and teachers think, well, research, why is that for me? I'm a practical person. Research is for people like this woman on the left in laboratories or in universities, and not for school teachers. So that's what many school teachers feel about research. They don't really feel it is for them. They don't really feel it is useful for them. And though there are these kinds of images. And I heard you introducing me thinking, is research going to be really, really heavy for me? I'm already a teacher with many classes, and I know that you have many classes and with large classes as well. And I don't need any extra burden. These are images that teachers may have, that you've got to do lots and lots of reading, that you've got to do lots of writing of a paper at the end. Well, I'm going to show you that it doesn't have to be like that. And I'm hoping to show you that it is something that is useful for teachers and practical for teachers by the end. So these are the people, this is a classroom. It's a classroom actually at my university. This is what we are thinking about researching. Teachers doing research means teachers doing research in their own classrooms with students. Not like this, not like the scientist on the left with sorts of chemicals and all of that, but these are the things that we are observing. These are not things, these are people. These are the people that we are looking at, that we are interviewing, or that we are finding out more about. We're trying to find out more about our classrooms. That's the kind of research that we are thinking about. And so by the end today, I hope that you may have gone from a sort of image of research as something very much not for you to something that is closer to you, something that is more possible. And I hope you'll feel that it can be useful for you. And the image, from an image like that to something more like this, a rather attractive, beautiful image. With our classrooms are rather like this kind of coral reef, very, very rich and colorful and diverse and interesting thing to be looking at more closely. This is what we are thinking about today. It's not going to solve all of your problems, and teachers, and I know that you have many, many issues and problems to try to solve in your classrooms. I'm not presenting this as some sort of magic solution. It's not. But it's something, teacher research, teachers doing research, is something that we have found with the teachers in Chile, also in countries like India and Nepal, that teachers themselves feel that it is useful and can be practical for them. So that's my aim today. Now, we need some definitions of research. What is research? I've tried to find some very simple definitions, trying to show that research is not something very, very full of difficult jargon. Let's look at the first one, research. A simple definition is organized, systematic search for answers to the questions we ask. I think it's important to think about questions, and this is the real starting point for research. We ask ourselves questions about our lives, about our world, about the classroom. This is something that teachers are doing actually every day. They're wondering, why is that happening? And we can turn those questions into a kind of research. We need to be a little bit organized and systematic as we try to find answers to the questions. An important thing to talk about is teacher research. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about people like me coming into your classroom. I'm not talking about university teachers visiting your classroom to do their own research. I'm talking about teachers themselves doing research for themselves, for their own purposes, and for the students in the classroom. That's who it's for, and that's who is doing the research. There's the teacher who's doing the research. And the topics are not things that other people think are important. The topic is something that you think is important in your classroom, a problem or puzzle in your classroom. So that's to start with. We need to define what research is in general. I'm going to give you some examples of teachers who've done research. Okay, so as I said, a lot of the examples are from work that I've done with teachers in Chile, in Latin America. And I've been there a few times, and there's a good project there being run by the British Council with secondary school teachers. And you can see some of those teachers here at the bottom. I've been working with Paula Rebiedo, who's a Chilean teacher trainer, and others in Chile. So these are the examples. These are the teachers, real teachers, in classrooms of about 40 students per class, and they've got a lot of classes per week, like up to 30 or 40 45-minute classes every week, which I think is about the same as what many of you are teaching as well. So it's just to show that research is possible, even in quite difficult circumstances. Let me share an example. This is not one of these teachers, but it is a teacher in Chile, just to give an example of what action research can look like. Now, I don't know if you can read that, so I'm going to read it aloud anyway. This is Teresa's story, and if you don't, I know that some people don't like to have something read aloud and sort of see it at the same time. So if you are one of those people who prefer to listen, just close your eyes and I'll read this story. So the academic manager of the school where I worked told me to play classical music in all my classes while students were doing a task. I did it and I noticed no difference, so I stopped. I was told the school's decision was based on research, which indicated it aided concentration and learning, and therefore I had to do it, no matter my observations. I was not convinced at all, and my colleagues and I decided to play classical music, but other kinds of music as well. Then I learned about classroom research, and the idea of conducting research in my classroom seemed the perfect solution to prove to my headmaster that she was wrong. So I prepared a series of tasks and different kinds of music to play while my students were working. I took notes of everything that happened while my students worked, their attitudes, their behavior, etc. I later collected their different pieces of work and started to notice certain differences in their work according to the music I played. I also gave them a survey, a simple kind of questionnaire for them to give me their opinions. Still, I wasn't convinced they understood my questions. Finally, I decided to interview them. So after each activity we did with background music, I asked them about how they felt, if they had trouble concentrating, if they felt the music helped them complete the task, and so on. After collecting all the evidence and analyzing it in detail, I gave up. It was true. My students learned better and concentrated more while listening to classical music. They told me they felt relaxed and it helped them think even more than if working in silence. On the contrary, popular music made them agitated. They said they felt like dancing and singing, so they couldn't concentrate on the task. I informed the results to my colleagues, and I had to admit my boss was right. I didn't feel I had lost the argument at all. I was proud of myself. I didn't do what I was told just because. I researched it and found answers of my own. Now that's Teresa in Chile, a teacher like you who did some research in her classroom. And at the end, she felt that it was not wasted at all. She felt very empowered by doing it, even though the result was actually the same as what the head teacher said. So I think that the key words here, I didn't do what I was told just because somebody had told me to do it. She researched it and she found answers of her own, and you can tell how proud she feels about that. That is the result we've found of teachers doing research, if they can find a little bit of time to do it, that they feel more in control of what's going on in their classrooms. They feel empowered by doing so. Now, was this research? What do you think? Was it research? Well, we can think again about the definitions we had before about what research is. Remember? The organized systematic search for answers to the questions we ask. Yes, it was research. It was organized. She planned to collect some, what we call data, some information to answer questions. The question was, research. Remember, research begins with questions, which we call research questions. What was her question, her main question? What did she want to find out? Well, she wanted to find out how do the students react to different kinds of music? That was her basic research question. How do students react to different kinds of music? And so getting from a problem or a topic that you might like to research, and I hope that you're going to start thinking about some issue, some problem, or some puzzle in your classrooms, and we might start to think about how you could research that in your classroom. But getting from that and turning a problem into a question, that's an important stage at the beginning. And her question was, how do the students react to different kinds of music? How does she feel? Well, we talked about that. I talked about that she felt quite empowered by the experience because she was in control of the solution in her classroom. So let's get back to the classroom. Let's get back to classrooms. This was the classroom I showed you from my university. But I know that my classroom is not like your classrooms. In fact, I don't have that many students in my classroom. But as I said, the teachers in Chile, they have a lot of students. And students, classrooms around the world are very different. This is a classroom in Belarus, near to Russia. Classrooms are very different. This is a primary school. This is I think in Poland, secondary school. And of course, my students are at a university. But we are talking today about primary and secondary school teachers. This is a class in China. Large class, you can see. But the good thing about this classroom is they've got lots and lots of books. Whereas in some classrooms around the world, they don't have many materials at all. This is in Sri Lanka. And you can see they don't have any computers or anything like that. I guess we might be coming closer, a little bit closer to the kind of classrooms that you teach in. I'm not sure. Yeah, this is a classroom in another South American country, Bolivia. Again, you see not much technology, and the desks are fixed to the floor, quite a large class. This is a class in an African country, secondary school. This is a picture I just got from the internet about one of your schools. Okay, so we are talking about this sort of school, and we're talking about what we might call difficult circumstances. So everything I'm talking about is trying to take into account the kinds of classrooms that teachers actually teach in around the world, not this kind of situation with maybe more technology and small numbers of students, lots of resources. But this is the kind of classroom that I'm trying to talk with you about. Well, Michael West was a British writer. He wrote a book in 1960, and it's called Teaching English in Difficult Circumstances. So he talked about difficult circumstances being this kind of class with over 30 pupils, more usually 40 or even 50, congested on benches, maybe in an unsuitably shaped room. Ill-graded, he means that maybe there are different abilities, mixed abilities in the class, high-performing students mixed with students who are not performing so well. With a non-native speaker teacher, often working in a hot climate. Pupils in such schools are more subject to elimination, that he means by that dropouts. In those days, pupils often leaving school early, like 12 or 13, in the country he was working in, which was Bangladesh. So I've been personally very interested in trying to help teachers in these kinds of schools, these kinds of difficult circumstances, because I think too often the ideas that we send out from England or from America are not really very appropriate to this kind of situation. And many of my teachers are coming from this kind of situation. So that's just to tell you that, I think that what I'm trying to say is, I hope, relevant to your kind of classrooms. So back to teacher research. Starting points, and this is where I hope you'll start to think about your own classrooms and what you might do in your classrooms. There are different ways, different sort of starting points for teacher research. Some teachers they think about something that's working in their classroom, something that's working well, a success, and they'd like to explore further how to reproduce that success, how to make more success. That's something that you could start with. If you think about your recent teaching and things that worked well. I do like to begin workshops generally with some talking about what's been going well, because of course we have many, many problems in our classrooms, but there are always things which we do succeed with, and which it's worth sharing and it's worth building upon. So we could have a keyword, working, something that's working. But very often, or usually, let's say, it's these two that we use to start research. Something that you're unsure about in relation to your students' learning or your teaching. I think with Teresa, the story we heard, that was the case. That was something she wasn't quite sure about, and she wanted to find out how do students react to different kinds of music. Also, very often, it's a problem, something that you know is not working and that you would like to improve. And doing some research to try to find out what is not working and how you can improve it would be something quite useful for teachers. I'm going to give you another example. This is an example from one of the teachers in Chile. Just as you listen, think about what is the starting point? Is it something that is working, something successful, or is it something that's not working, or is it something that teacher is just unsure about? I'll ask you maybe to raise your hands at the end to tell me which one you think. So this is a story from this book. Now, about 2 or 3 years ago, together with Paula and Deborah Bullock, we collected together about 10 teachers' stories of exploratory action research in Chile, in South America. And we put them into this book. We tried to write them, or with the teachers, write them in a way that is easy to understand. And we wanted this to be a resource for teachers around the world to see how they could maybe do some exploratory action research themselves. And so it's online. You can see the link at the bottom. It's a PDF. It's open access. It's not, you don't have to pay for this. It's published by the British Council. And if you want to follow up from today, I'd suggest or recommend that you write this address down and go and have a look at this. I think maybe some of you have already looked at this. Is that true? If you have seen this before in preparing for this, could you just put your hands up? Okay, so one or two. That's great. I wondered if okay, one of the stories is by a teacher called Andrea, and have any of you seen this story before? Did any of you look at this? Just put up your hands if you did. Okay, good. Some of you did. This is the first story in the book. Andrea teaches in Iquique in Chile. I'm just going to. She went through a process over about 6 months, I think. You can see her topic was wrapping up classes. And she later went to a conference and she presented about her research to other teachers. And I'm going to just use the slides that she used when she did that. So these are her slides. I'm just going to go through them to show you what she did. So this is her first slide. And her context was, she has 44 hours per week. It's not real hours, it's a little bit less than hours, but you can see she's a very, very busy teacher with a lot of students in each class. This is how she started. The last part of her class, she was wondering whether she was doing it right. And she decided to find out the answer. And the phrase that she used was wrapping up her class. I don't know what you do at the end of your classes, but anyway, she was wondering how she could wrap up better, or she wasn't really sure actually whether she was wrapping up in a very good way. So she wanted to find out. These are her questions. These are her research questions. What is a wrapping up? She wanted to find out from by reading, and what are the characteristics of a wrapping up in general, but also in her own practice. And how do her students react in that part of the class? That was her main question, really, to explore the situation. So what did she do to answer these questions? She asked some colleagues what they thought about wrapping up. She surfed the web for answers. She asked a colleague to observe her class just about the wrapping up, and she compared what she was doing and her ideal wrapping up. What did she find out? Her colleagues and her had the same thoughts about wrapping up. That was good. The article on the web also confirmed her ideas about what it should be like. In other words, they felt it should be something that would consolidate the knowledge in the students' minds. At the end of the class, there should be something which fixes the information or fixes the learning in their minds. They both thought that, but there was a huge difference between what I was doing and what I thought was right. Because every time she repeated the same question at the end of the class. Any questions? That was the question that she asked at the end of the class. And her students just packed their things to leave. So she wasn't doing it in the way that she really wanted to do it. And so she felt she really had to do something about it to change. So she decided to try a different activity and see what happened. It was a kind of little bit of a mind mapping activity. And she came back to step 2, which was, remember, to ask a colleague to observe her class. So what she came back to, she asked a colleague to observe her class again. And she then thought and planned lots of different activities as wrapping up. And you can see some pictures showing some of these different activities. And she was lucky to have somebody who could come and watch her class. You don't always have that opportunity to have other teachers come and watch your class, but if you have that opportunity, that's a really good thing that you can try to do to find out if something is working or not. But she also asked her students about the different activities, and I think any teacher could potentially ask students to not a big questionnaire, but to ask, just tell her which activity that she's been trying, which one did they like the best. That was what she asked them. You can see them, they're writing here. And they like the magic board, it says. Finally, she made a video. She presented her research because she found out by this time which ones worked best. She presented it to a small group of other teachers, and she took a video on a mobile phone of her presenting this. And she then listened to the mobile phone recording and wrote it down in a kind of written report. And this is what she found. And so she wrote it down, and you can hear her presenting it as well here. But her reflections were these: discovering is more important than solving a problem. Teaching is learning. Teachers are powerful. Research helps you to know why you're doing something and not just acting because of a feeling. Research is not only for experts. Teachers have much more things to say because we are the ones who are inside the classroom. I accept that we make mistakes, or maybe we do not do things in the best way. That was just repeating what she said in her presentation. Well, with what do you think? With Andrea, was was her starting point a success, something that was working? If you think so, show me your hands. What was her starting point? Was it something that was working well? Put up your hands. Was it something that she was not sure about? If you think so, could you put up your hands? Okay, most of you, yeah, think that. That's also what I think, that it was something that she was just unsure about. A puzzle, you could say a puzzle about her teaching, just like Teresa before. But then it actually turned into this kind of thing. So she started off not sure and exploring the situation. Then she discovered actually something really was not working. And the second part of her research was trying different things out because she knew something was not working, trying different things out and seeing what happened. Now, the second part of her research, when she was trying all these things out, that's what I would call action research. So action research is really when you know that something is not working and you try out different things and you see what happens. That's action research. But before that, she explored because she wasn't sure. She was exploring the situation, and I would call that exploratory research. In her case, she put them together because that's what we recommend, to explore first, exploratory research, exploratory action research. So her actions were based on what she had discovered from exploring. Okay, so let's think a bit more about exploratory action research. I'll just check the time. I think we have about 10 minutes left, so before the break. So I think that Andrea was involved in what we call exploratory action research. And here is a way of showing that. She planned to explore, that's A. She explored what the current situation was about her wrapping up. Then she analyzed and reflected. So remember, a colleague watched her class, she looked at the internet, she reflected herself about what she wanted, she compared that with what was actually happening, and she reflected. That was the first exploratory part of her research. She decided she had to change something. So she planned a change based on her exploration. She actually put into practice those different ways of wrapping up. She observed, each time she observed what happened, and then she reflected about what had happened, and she actually presented her results. So that's typical action research, this part on the right. So what we've added, though, in Chile is to explore first. That's why we call it exploratory action research. I think that we have time for one more example. I think for this, I'm just going to go bigger like this. Can you still see this? Can you still see the? Can you still see this? Could you put up your hands if you can? Can you see the diagram? Put up your hands if you can. Good. Okay. So this is another way of showing exactly the same thing. It's just using some more complicated sort of spiral diagram. Let's start at the top with a different example of a different teacher. This teacher starts by saying they think their students are not motivated. Well, many teachers feel this way. I don't know about your classes, but many teachers feel that at least some of their students are not very motivated. And what teachers, if you do action research, maybe you think, oh, I've learned this technique from maybe one of the later talks in this series. Oh, that's a good idea. I'll try out that kind of game or something like that. So many teachers will jump from thinking my students are not motivated to planning some change. Like, okay, let's play this kind of vocabulary game to try to motivate the students. And if they're doing action research, they'll immediately do that, and they will maybe ask for comments or ask a colleague to see what's happened and reflect about that. And that would be a sort of small action research. But the problem with that is that we don't really know why or whether students are motivated enough to just go in and change things. And exploratory action research encourages you to step back a little bit, to step back and to explore the situation before you jump in and try out lots and lots of different new activities. So in exploratory action research, we would recommend that you just try to plan to find some evidence about the students' feelings and what students might themselves be interested in before you do any action. So this teacher decided to ask the students for their perceptions about different activities in the class. The teacher asked them to write a few notes about what they enjoy or don't enjoy in the class, or what they like about English or what they don't like about English. Not a big questionnaire, just some notes at the end of the class from each student, like a feedback sheet. This teacher found that the students actually would like to speak more in the class. It was a very surprising finding, because the students, the teacher thought that the students were not motivated. But actually what the students really said they wanted would to have more speaking in the class. As a result of that, instead of doing some vocabulary games, the teacher planned and designed an action plan which would be suitable for what the students were saying. So now the teacher started to teach more conversational classes and asked the students for their perceptions, and also asked a colleague to observe the class. And then reflected about that. The students did become more engaged, but they needed more practice. So the second part of this diagram, the bottom half is action research. The top half is exploratory research. And together that makes exploratory action research. As I said, the book on the left will show you more about more stories, real stories of teachers doing exploratory action research. The book on the right is something we published with Paolo Rebiedo in January this year. This is also completely free, open access. We tried to write this in a way which is easy to understand for teachers with lots of examples. And I hope that's what I'm trying to do today. That's what I'm trying to do today as well, is give examples, show that research is something that teachers can do, and write about. It's a handbook where we go step by step through different stages um, of action research, of exploratory action research, and I think that what we'll do is we'll have a break, and I hope that you've got interested in this. After the break, let's go through some of the stages that you could go through from this book on the right, chapters 1 to 5 especially. It's not very, we don't have very long. 40 minutes is a very short time. So I'm just going to give you a taster, really, of how maybe you could start planning some exploratory action research after we have a break. So we'll meet again in about, shall we say in about 15 minutes? And please do talk about it together. During the break, something you could think about together. Remember these starting points, and you could think about your own recent classroom experience. You may have many answers to these different questions, because that's where we'll start. We'll start with you after a break. Is that okay? So I'll see you again in 10, 15 minutes. Okay, let's give a time. Let's say 25 past. I'll connect again with you. Is that okay? Do you prefer 10 minutes? In 10 minutes. So let's say 20 past. At 20 past, let's get together again. Yeah. Okay. Great.